Welcome to the Beatles Talk Show. Today is
guys.
February 15th. Let's look at Beatles history facts that happened on this date through the years. Did you know, in fact, it was today in 1962, the Beatles were performing a show at the Cavern Club at lunchtime, but then they got to play a massive show that night in New Brighton, where they played for 3,500 people at the Tower Ballroom. Now that's quite a huge show. Maybe
I was going to say
the largest they've ever
crowd,
played
yeah.
to this time.
Mm-hmm.
And they shared the bill with Terry Lightfoot and his New Orleans jazz band.
We all know who they are, right? Of course.
I bought all their records. Yes. On this date in 1964, this was a big day for them. Billboard magazine, of course, was covering that they now had the #1 album, the #1 song, but also there was such a frenzy for British product. It was already happening that they were saying this was the new British invasion, and the Beatles now had 5 songs in the top 100 in the United States. And that Wanna Hold Your Hand was now officially the #1 song in the US for a 3rd week in a row.
And it should be stated that I think the first 5 slots, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, were all held by the Beatles.
That would happen in April.
What was out of April? Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff though, regardless.
Yeah.
You know, that shows the power of the band, right? And it was on this day they gave an interview to Dick Clark for American Bandstand. And then they rehearsed in Miami again for the second live appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. So again, a little bit.
That's right. So this should be the first contact they ever made with Dick Clark.
Mm-hmm. And in the U.S., the Beatles released 8 days a week, and I don't want to spoil the party, spending 10 weeks on Billboard charts and getting to #1, the highest position, like boom, right off the bat.
And that was released on this date in 1965.
Mm-hmm.
And on that same day in 1965, the Beatles were in the studio recording Another Girl and I Need You, and they
Good
finished
song.
their new single, Ticket to Ride.
Yeah.
And most interesting, on this date in 1965, John Lennon passed his driving test. He was 24 years old and finally got his driver's license. And they said that he never really would be a good driver. And so that's kind of interesting. And oddly enough, I got my driver's license at 24 too.
And you're not a very good driver either. Well.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah. I just waited. So, anyway.
And in 1971, George Harrison releases the single "What Is Life," and it enters, I believe, the highest position, number 10 on the charts, which not bad, not great, but not bad.
It would be one of his biggest hits because George didn't have very many top 10 hits.
No.
Unfortunately, as a solo act.
No.
On this date in 1968, this is a big day, John and George took their wives to Rishikesh, India, to study with the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
You sure that's all they did was study?
Yeah, something like that, right?
I've heard stories about it. Anyway, go ahead.
Eventually, later in the week, Paul, Jane Asher, Ringo, and his wife Maureen would follow along. And of course, Ringo and Maureen would leave after a while. They didn't like the food, and they just really didn't like it there. Paul and Jane stayed a bit longer, but it was really John and George and their wives who stayed quite a bit longer. But of course, there would eventually be some controversy with a sex scandal and everything.
Yeah, well, and John Lennon even said, it's all bullshit. He said, I'm leaving because this is bullshit. This guy is no god. He's just an ordinary guy who wants to get his rocks off. That's basically what he said. It was really only George who really delved into it and got into it a lot, and stayed pretty much with the whole thing until his passing. But John even wrote the song Sexy Sadie about the Maharishi on the album, the White Album, the Beatles from 1968.
Yeah.
So it goes to show his animosity towards the whole experience, after the fact.
Yeah. A couple important things did happen while they were there. I mean, they wrote some of their classic songs. John wrote Julia, and in fact, Donovan, another famous pop singer at the time, taught John how to finger pick the guitar, and that changed the way John would write acoustic songs, and you can hear that because he actually finger picks on Julia, which he wrote at this time for his mother.
That's true, isn't it? It was Paul, yeah. Well, you listen to Paul on Yesterday, and he's already finger picking well before John. That is true. Much more accomplished guitarist, I guess. Interesting.
And of course, Dear Prudence was also written at this time. So
great song, I love that tune.
on this day in 1972, John Lennon and Yoko Ono were on day 2 of hosting the Mike Douglas Show. And on this date in 1988, George Harrison published a limited edition book called Songs by George Harrison. A very expensive book. It cost over $300 retail American dollars.
That's a lot of money
for
back
this. But, for the ultimate Beatle fan, this was a cool item to have.
You know what I just acquired? I got the original hardcover book of I, Me, Mine, written by George Harrison in 1979. I just acquired that. Yeah.
Good.
And that's the one book that really pissed off John Lennon, because I haven't read the whole thing yet, but John said there was no reference to him whatsoever in this autobiography, basically, of George's life. And John said, that's crazy, because George admired me all my life. He looked up to me, and yet he doesn't mention me in the book. So that really pissed John off. I remember that. It kind of stuck in his craw a little bit there. But anyway, that's what happened. There might have been a bit of animosity going on. I don't know, really. It's so long ago. How do you remember these things? I don't know at all.
All right, there you go. Beatles news for the day. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
So my dear friends, come back when you can.